content marketers are struggling.
Yeah.
Everything's changing. Got to do more with less, all that stuff.
There's always been the challenge. You can never satisfy the content beast, right? The demand. Organizing, publishing, approving, all of that have gotten better.
What are your thoughts about the naysayers about, hey, we got to think about brand safety. We want it to be quality. We want it to put our best foot forward. But then there's this whole other camp about authenticity and moving quickly. Welcome to the Digital Accomplice video podcast. Today we're here with Chris Pemberton, who is a VP of marketing. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent. So as we get started here, let's talk about your wins. What's a recent content marketing success that you've enjoyed?
So it's interesting because on the one hand, it was a pretty straightforward demand gen webcast. I lead B2B tech marketing teams. So classic channel is do a webcast, right? Drive leads over to sales. And while we had a couple 300 participants, that was totally a win. What I really enjoyed about it was the ability to create ancillary assets from that one recording. So we had the experts, right? Moderated panel. And then we were able to create full-length videos, short vertical social videos, blog posts, web content, YouTube videos, all from the same root asset. So definitely a win in terms of lead gen, demand gen, but also in terms of efficient content production.
Right. Shoot once and repurpose everywhere.
You got it.
So what would you say right now is like your biggest marketing challenge, and what are you doing about it, and sort of what's working, what's not?
So one of the biggest challenges that I see, but also a lot of my colleagues, VPs, CMOs, is how do they retool, reimagine the marketing function in a world of AI? And what's interesting is the solution to that isn't hard. It just takes a little bit of work. Right now, everybody is so busy doing more with less. Budgets have been cut. Getting access to great talent, finding time to upskill on the latest AI tools and techniques is really hard. But the way to do it is create a personal bootcamp. Could be a week, could be a month. Don't have it any longer than that. And just jump in, partner with your CIO, your CTO, avail yourself of experts, AI Marketing Institute, consultants, hire experts for a couple of hours. It's well worth the investment, but set a goal, 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, build the use cases that you really want to improve to have business impact, and just go do it. Don't have it drag on for 6 months. So that's one of the big challenges, but the solution is there.
So then as you look forward into how you're using content moving forward, how have you been using video now? And then what would be like a way that you'd like to be doing more with it?
Well, as you know, I completely reimagined the content production process and with video at its core, and really rethought how we can produce more better assets. Record at once, some of the tools to capture thought leadership, voice of customer, voice of experts, capture at once. And then you can spin out, again, ancillary assets from that one recording. Very quickly, you can translate the conversation, and then you can, again, create a number of different assets. Now, that's different than high production kind of commercial or brand sizzle reel video. That's a different animal. But again, this is how you can use AI. Okay, what's the use case? What's the business impact? Well, we need to create better content at scale. Okay, how do we do that? Rethink it given the tool set that's out there.
So you touched on this just now, but let's talk a little bit deeper about how you're using AI now and sort of what's working and what's not.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I kind of went down the rabbit hole during a transition to really jump in and educate and create my own personal boot camp. And what I found is, there's a lot of overlap in the AI marketing landscape in terms of features, functions, benefits, positioning in the marketplace, and also the learning curve isn't necessarily. It's a lot steeper than a lot of the marketing messaging would have you believe. Buy a SaaS license subscription, get a couple of seats, and you're up and running. Well, then you have to go through their university, and it just takes rolling up your sleeves. But once I had use cases, then I said, okay, what's the best tool or good enough tool to apply it to that use case and see if it has a demonstrable impact. So having done that for 2, 3, 4 use cases, that's everything from planning to presentations, right? Taking raw input, research, some of the Gen AI around content creation, your Hyperwrites, your Jaspers of the world. Then you pick a couple narrow down to one quickly and start to push it through the org.
And then as we get into repurposing, we've talked a little bit about this, but I'd like to kind of talk about some of the limits there about like what's working and what's not in repurposing. We all love the idea, but when it really rubber meets the road, what's working and what's not with repurposing?
Sometimes the AI video editing tools aren't great out of the box. They need some work. And also some of the workflows for existing editors or content creators might not necessarily align with the tools. They need to change their processes and workflows, which takes time. So there's sand in the gears right there. You can't just have a team all of a sudden on day one adopt a new tool, change their processes, workflows, approvals, all of that, and have it just go from 0 to 5th gear overnight. So some of the video editing tools, obviously some of the Gen AI, there's some interesting examples. The responses so my favorite was, we were doing a brand refresh. We had very tight constraints. We had about 4 months, had to do it with internal resources. So we used AI tools for ideation, brand names, visuals, creatives. My favorite part was the little disclaimer after you hit generate that said AI results might not be true. It's kind of a big disclaimer. Now, the funny thing was, this was a name for the company. It was a net new name. The name was promising from a brand architecture perspective, and I believe it was a Nigerian word. And I went, and no matter what dialect language I looked up, I could not find that word in Nigerian. So I couldn't use it because the source data was flawed. So AI can really help for some things, can help accelerate ideation, idea generation, brainstorming, but you still got to you got to dot your I's and cross your T's and do your homework before you go out to market with it.
Yeah, and speaking of homework, with all this content that we're creating and repurposing and getting AI to help us with, how do we measure? Like, how are you measuring right now the performance of this content, and what's working there and what's not?
So you still have to do the basic blocking and tackling around reporting and analytics and tagging. Your Google Tag Manager, all of your analytics and reporting. Maybe it's UTM parameters, tag all your content, all your campaigns. So that hasn't changed. Now, there are some tools that are helpful for the RevOps and the marketing operations teams to facilitate tagging and reporting on content at scale. There's some AI tools that will go out and find and auto tag, but you still have to set that system up. And it still requires a human to say, okay, here are the content assets that are being used across these channels, these formats, these campaigns, and let's make sure that they're tagged so that when someone engages with it, either the pixel fires or whatever it is.
And then as we get towards the end here, would you have sort of like a biggest marketing piece of advice for content marketers out there? If you could kind of give them the golden egg or the silver bullet, what's your big takeaway piece of advice for them?
My advice for content marketers in 2024 and 2025 is disrupt yourself before it happens by something or somebody else. So roll up your sleeves, jump in, understand how the tech stack, Gen AI, large language models, machine learning, all of that is going to disrupt the content function and the marketing function, and reimagine how you think and approach content.
Content marketers are struggling, right? Everything's changing. You got to do more with less, all that stuff.
There's always been the challenge and the headwind of you can never satisfy the content beast, right? The demand. And it's always been a game of catch up. What's happened in the last couple of years is that while the processes and the tools for managing, organizing, publishing, approving, all of that have gotten better, your content management system, not from a website perspective, but your news cred, your Contently, your platforms for content marketers, those have helped. They were still missing a piece that a significant, a radical change to how it's done, and that's where AI came in. And I said, so I jumped in and I kind of created my own personal boot camp, learned as much as I could, bought the tools, tested them, and I realized that from a governance strategy perspective, it's all changed. You can capture the content once. That could be a case study, and then you can repurpose it. And the light bulb went off when I was talking to a colleague at a conference, and he said, "Yeah, we recorded a customer case study in the morning, and we published the case study to our website that night. I kind of stopped. So you went from story capture to publishing in 24 hours. So that was really the shot across the bow, if you will, that I said, I got to learn this. I got to figure it out. Because
Yeah.
if people are doing that, right, and you don't always hear about the cutting room floor and the ugly stuff of processes and workflows, right? And when you hear about something that's radically improved like that, I was like, I got to learn this. Yeah. So then I said, okay, well, there's all these form factors. You've got social, you've got long form SEO, thought leadership, video, and video has just been growing year over year over year. And that's where I said, I need to kind of avail myself, bring in somebody who has expertise that I don't. So you and I got connected, and it kind of went from there because you were kind of open and realizing that things were changing. So I remember our conversation. It's kind of like, yeah, I think we could partner on this and do something pretty special.
Yeah, I think I immediately saw the overlap between, me as a video native and a video expert, as well as an entrepreneur. And then you've got that deep experience in the marketing world and like really high level technical stuff that, I haven't been in that world. I've always been sort of adjacent to that, making the content that then gets plugged into all those systems. But yeah, I thought that this is a good opportunity for us to kind of like have a win-win here. And as I talk to people about this, everybody gets it. Everybody understands that this is valuable. And so I just start asking myself, well, is there a place where this doesn't make sense? I mean, we're not making NFL commercials, but we're not doing blog posts either. It's kind of like there's this middle ground of high value, I don't know, mid-tier content, which can just be cranked out like a fire hose. And I'm not really seeing a lot of downside yet. Do you have a sense of like when this kind of thing doesn't make sense?
No, not yet. I agree. It's if you think about what the pandemic did was it obviously forced us all to go remote, hybrid, and the legacy of that is people are very comfortable interacting over Zoom or Teams or whatever. The problem is as marketers, we've gotten complacent with low quality recordings and low production value. Recording on a 720 Zoom recording and then turning around, yeah, you can do it fast. You can just turn around and spit it out. But what does that do to your brand? Right now, on the other side, we're not doing a 30-second spot for the NFL, right? A brand commercial. That's a different animal. But we can definitely up-level these remote content capture and the stories that are right now being captured, but we can up-level those and we can also accelerate their production and publishing. So I think that's the real sweet spot. I don't see any downside. Now you still have to have human governance, copy editing, proof, publishing. This is not fully automated, but it does radically accelerate the process.
One thing on that note that I've noticed is as an entrepreneur and someone who's kind of leaning into this, I've been able to test and prototype this stuff very rapidly. And the people that I'm talking to who are prospective clients, they're like, it's going to take a little longer for them to adopt a strategy like this. They can't just like pull the lever like someone like me can. So I'm just kind of wondering if you've been doing any thinking or learning about like how companies would onboard a process like they're like, yeah, I want to do this. How do we start? How do we pull this in quickly so we're not getting beat by our competitors, right? Because this is going to move fast, I think.
Yeah, it's about speed and quality. So here's a good example. You might have an existing workflow and process. You've got your content team, you've got your internal engineers, solution architects who you might be interviewing, could be a customer. You've got an existing workflow and process. What you're doing with this is you're actually capturing the raw material that's from the expert in their voice first. So then you can actually collapse all the different parts that take time. The approvals, it's already in their voice. And then this is where the brand can say, this is your voice. We edited it and we're getting it ready. We might give you one crack at review, but you've got a 24-hour turnaround. We're not going to sit there for a week and wait for you to review it because it's in your voice, right? Now, customer, obviously that's different, but it's similar in that you did a recording, you captured them making the points, and then you can go and turn around and say, hey, here's the designed case study, and turn it around a lot faster. Yeah. So you can leverage existing workflows, but at the end of the day, it's changing. So yeah, it will be changed. So there's a change management process to it.
And then what are your thoughts about the naysayers about, hey, we got to think about brand safety here. We want it to be quality. We want it to put our best foot forward. But then there's this whole other camp about authenticity and moving quickly and, test early and often, move fast, break things. How do those two opposing views of thought come together on a process like this for you?
On the one hand, the brand stewardship hasn't changed, right? Marketing is still the steward and the champion, as is the whole organization. So you still need those checks and balances and governance mechanisms to make sure that what's getting put out there is on brand, it's high quality. There are opportunities. Maybe it's a podcast or a series, a program that is intentionally a little bit faster and looser and pulls from the creator world, if you will. And I use that loosely. Again, you're not going to go live, or you're going to need to have the checks and balances, right? Like live is a whole different animal, so you can add some delays in there on the recording. But there's different ways to do it. But at the end of the day, you still need the brand stewardship, protection, and evolution. You can't just use this process and say we're just going to open everything up. You can't do that at all.
And then, do you have a thought about using AI? I think there's this temptation to want to automate everything, and we'll just put a bunch of stuff in there and it'll spit out content which we just post live. There's got to be like a human layer of like, eliminating the hallucinations and making sure that the machine is behaving appropriately. What are your
Yep.
thoughts about where that needs to come into the process?
100%. It's not AI first. It's AI forward, which means you're adopting AI to move forward faster, but you still need the basic business practices, right? Governance processes, and also that's where earlier I was saying you want to test it, right? Get it into a sandbox, especially around data. Work with the tool vendor, set up a sandbox, partner with legal to have an AI policy. But definitely you want to be an early adopter in that you don't want to wait for the disruption to come externally. You want to being an early adopter doesn't necessarily mean you're going to use them all, right? It means you're gonna jump in early and try to understand and have first mover advantage, and then be picky about what you use and how. Yeah,
Right.
you still need those guardrails for sure.
So as I've been talking to people about all these issues and how they come together, I've sort of used the term video octopus just to kind of like wrap your head around what we're talking about is the record once, repurpose everywhere, which I guess would be the tentacles. So like I'm not in love with the phrase, but it has really been helpful to kind of have a shorthand to talk about it. Do you have a way of talking about this that feels like has resonated for you and the people you're talking to? Like an elevator pitch kind of way of summarizing this?
I mean, the record once, reuse everywhere is a pretty snappy soundbite. Video octopus, but no, not beyond that. I mean, I tend to not. I use it in different conversations, right? Where does it fit in terms of your budget, the overall marketing spend and plan? But those are fine.
Anything else you want to touch on before we part ways?
No, no, I don't think so. I think
Okay.
we can take another shot, see how it is, and again,
Yeah, exactly. It's just good to have some material to look at. If it's usable, great. If not, we learned. All right, Chris. Well, thank you for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.
yeah, thanks for having me.